The city of Hamilton, where I record this podcast, is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. Hamilton is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and this land acknowledgement is a small gesture to recognize the rich history of this land and my role as a settler, neighbor, partner, and caretaker. I also stand in solidarity with the murdered and missing Indigenous women, girls, transgender, and two-spirited peoples, and all those who seek justice on their behalf. Miigwech. Thank you. Welcome to the arena, where sometimes the hardest part is showing up. My name is Linda McLaughlin. Thank you for being here. In celebration of International Women's Day, I'm pleased to highlight a woman who exemplifies courage and positivity. It was truly a gift to meet her. Thank you for listening. This is episode 25.
Great to see you, Linda. It's been mind-blown, the people that you have on the list. And just, I see like a common thread through it all. And I think that that's what's so beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
About this journey. So
thank you.
Yeah, so excited.
I put together a little intro for you, and feel free to correct me as I go along.
Sure, absolutely.
Maria Esterline, you're a sister, a daughter, and a mom. You arrived in the United States from Vietnam as a young child and had to adjust to living in a new country, learn a new language and culture. You had lost your identity. This new world was not always a welcoming environment. You became a teacher and you taught elementary school. And again, you didn't always find the school administration welcoming or supportive. You went on to pursue a master's in education and are now a high-flex special education teacher. You work as an education consultant and also a lecturer at the University of Florida. You're a distance runner and a self-described possibilitarian, believing that the world is full of possibility if you bring the right mindset. Welcome to the arena, Maria.
First of all, I'm like chilled because it's like you have that set out there. That's your identity. But like when someone says it, it just feels so, oh, yeah, you're right. That's me. So since I last chatted with you, one little thing that have changed in that little introduction was that I was a high flex special ed teacher, but as we talked, I got moved to another position as in the teaching assistant because they found a licensed special ed teacher for that. So right. I was filling in the gap. So I'm a teaching assistant now, which I love because I still get to teach.
Ultimately, your great love is working with the children.
Oh my goodness. There's nothing better than to get to work with the human beings that get started in the world. And their journey is about learning, is being a student. And so to be part of that building block of learning essential skills or non-essential skills, it just is why I show up in the world. I just love being able to say that I'm part of the journey of someone's learning and how they have arrived in their careers.
Wow, you really light up when you talk about that. Lots of people say, yeah, it's really important what I do, but you're completely glowing as you're talking about that.
I think why I glow is because someone gave me a chance. And as you shared, I did come to America at the age of 10, not knowing the language, and then given very simple phrases just to get you through that introductional phrase. Hello, how are you? Then they respond and you're like, where to go from there? And so I credit a lot of my own definition of success back to my fourth grade teacher. I was 10 years old in a fourth grade classroom, and everything just sounded just like Charlie Brown teacher, where you can hear it, but none of it made sense in your mind. And so during history class, I would get pulled out of class by volunteers because it was a very small school. volunteers that would come in and teach me the alphabet, teach me how to read. And a lot of time I felt like my only subject that I excel in was math because it was numbers. And it's just so much easier to read numbers. They didn't have an ESL program. I grew up in a very small town of Indiana. When I came to America, there was only one other Vietnamese family. So you either sink or float. You don't have any choice.
So take me back to your childhood, either before or after you arrived in America. What did that look like?
I think a good place to start was the dream that my father had, that learning was going to be part of our foundation, part of our family story, and that education is the best gift that we can give ourselves. And to make that happen, he had to make some huge risk. And that was going on a refugee boat. And so that particular boat was captured. Somehow my mom was notified. And so she would go to prison, because that's where you go if you try to escape the country. She would go to prison and check to see who was entered into the books. If he's alive, then he's in prison. If he's not in prison, then is he dead? My dad and his friend jumped off the refugee boat and swam to an island in Malaysia. And there they camped there for a while, and then they were sponsored by a family in Indiana. So that's kind of how we were led to Indiana, in the smallest of towns. And so during that whole time, my dad didn't know that my mom was expecting me. So my mom was pregnant with me, and I have two older brothers. And so for 10 years, our family was apart. My dad was living in a foreign country trying to make ends meet so that our family can be reunited. And what that would look like is he would live in a garage, rent space in a garage. He would go to school, high school, in his 20s, because it was so important that he get that high school diploma, not knowing the language, not understanding what's happening, but knew that he had to get that diploma, and was working full-time at a company called Zimmer's, which is an orthopedic company that he just retired from after 41 years.
Wow.
As of January 15th. It was so remarkable, amazing. Talk about courageous. And so during that 10 years, he would send packages back for us. But my mom was left to take care of us, a single mom with 3 kids. I lived at my grandparents' house a lot, which was right by the school. My grandparents would have been on my dad's side of the family. My mom's job was she would sell yogurt out of an ice box that we had in our home. Her job was doing embroidery work for people, like on dresses or pillowcases or whatever. She just learned things on her own because she was at the age where once you hit like 10th grade, you're going into trade school or military work. I remember playing outside, and every time an airplane would go by, and I'll be like, oh, that could be my dad coming to get me today. And that was the memories that I have. My mom was working all the time. I'm either over at my grandparents' house because I'm going to school. And so I spent a lot of time at their house. After 10 years, we finally got the paperwork, and it was such an exciting day. And I was 9 at that time. Once we got that golden ticket to come to America, that was the journey in itself, because I remember being at the Ho Chi Minh airport and people were crying. And I was like, why are they crying? As a 9-year-old, I'm like, aren't they happy? Like, I get to go meet my dad. Why are you guys crying? And I don't think I realized at that time that journey to America was going to have its own setback, and yet excitement. And I remember saying goodbye and getting on the plane, and our first stop was this building in Thailand. Again, my brothers, my mom, and I. And I remember my mom said, just stay put here in this building. I'm going to go find a place for us to sleep, because we'll just be here for a few days, because they just need to do the testing so that we don't bring any diseases. So quarantine is something I'm very good at, because I've experienced quarantine back when I was 9 years old. And so my mom went up to the 3rd floor of this building and noticed there were people behind bars, and realized that we were being held in prison. So that was where they put us in prison while we're getting tested before we came to America. So the third floor was where the prisoners hung out. And so the second floor was first come, first serve, and all the rooms, all the beds. And when I said bed, it's a metal bunk bed, and all those rooms were taken. And so we found a space in the hallway on a concrete floor in the corner that we could just lay. And so we ended up being there for about 2 weeks because my brother had pink eye. And so we each day would share one bowl of rice between the four of us. And we were so fortunate that there was these two gentlemen that was right next to us, and they had salt and pepper. It was such a treat. So that was one part of the first leg. And then we finally arrived to America after 2 weeks. And because my dad had help from the senator that helped with the paperwork and everything, they had the news station came. So my first meeting of my dad was in front of lights and video cameras and flashlights and just people calling out our name. And I just had no idea what that meant because they were all speaking English and I had no idea what that was. That was the beginning of where I feel like a little bit of my identity was lost in Vietnam so that I can be open to embracing this new culture.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned people were crying at the airport and you were confused by that. And I don't know if you saw your grandparents again, if you understood that some of those goodbyes were...
Yeah, and I think that was it, that I didn't know that was going to be the last time that I would see my grandparents because I was 9. So now I get the tears because I don't think I was old enough to understand what was about to happen.
It certainly sounds like there's a lot of events in your life that could be that moment, but what event in your life has had the most profound impact on you?
I think we can talk about the perception of what people thought of America. We can talk about the fact that my family and friends, how other countries just want a chance to come to America. What a golden ticket that is. Like to get to come to America. If you can get to America, you're automatically rich. That was the mindset. That if you get to America, it is the land of freedom. That everything is going to be perfect. That was their vision. And I think some of that kind of played into, oh, shoot, this is it. I'm going to have a perfect life in America. So young and naive and unaware of the journey that I had to walk on. And a favorite statement that I've shared with so many people is that I will always be a foreigner in this country. Even though my dad especially wanted us to embrace the culture and we're just trying to blend in as much as possible. Don't try to stand out, just try to blend in, to learn the language. So after a day of school, I would go home and there was more school. We'd sit in front of this board at my parents' house. And I would go to an alternative learning center to learn additional, like it was just repeated. And then by 7th grade, my mom, my 2 older brothers, myself, we got our citizenship. We went through and passed the test. I still remember my dad would quiz us in our station wagon, all of us going on field trips to the museum in Indianapolis, to Chicago. I was not just acclimating to the culture and doing the right steps to becoming a citizen, but even recognizing that although all the work that I've done, all the accreditations and the schooling and all the steps that you do, I'm not a typical Asian. I went to a field where I wanted to give back. And it was Miss Q's impact on me that I was like, I felt incredibly blessed that she had given me such a love for learning by the way that she went out of her way to get the right people in the right place to get me caught up 10 years of learning the language to get caught up so that by 6th grade, I was still in that school and I was back in the 6th grade classroom, not doing any remedial work or anything.
So within 2 years, you were basically caught up. Wow, that's amazing.
And I wasn't in the individual education plan. Do I still need work? Absolutely. But I was put it back in class. So the path of success looked different for me than it did for another Asian family. I went on the path less traveled a lot of times, most of the time. And it's how I've had to arrive at defining my own success and not the way of the world. So those events definitely help to shape me into how I show up in the world and giving back just as someone gave back to me. I knew teaching was exactly where I needed to be because as a teacher, I position myself as a learner. I never want to give up on learning. And I want to model that for my students as well, to not give up on their dreams.
And so now that you've been inside of that industrial complex, working at the elementary school level, middle school levels, what has that looked like now that you're in your grade 4 teacher's shoes?
Yeah, I appreciate her so much more. I think I thank her all the time, but until you're willing to open your eyes to brokenness of the infrastructure, the setup or a setback to some of the things that you're promised, that with a college education and 2 master's degree, you're still considered less than, no matter what. After a decade of teaching and working in the school district where I created a summer online program to help combat the summer learning loss and sold this program to 8 other school districts that started out as 2 courses that went to 14 courses. I was the liaison in selling this program to a university and 7 other school districts around the country. And even that was not enough because the principal told me that I should have never been a teacher. And he just said, Maria, you're just not good enough. You're just not. Like, you might want to rethink about your career choice. And that was hard. That was really hard to swallow because that's where another part of my identity I had to let go. That I had this title and this vision of myself as being that lifelong learner, lifelong teacher. And that went through some dark battle of shame that I had let my family down because by that time I had just graduated with my license and second master's in ed leadership. So I had the license to be a principal. And this is what the principal told me. And that gave me a really sour taste in my mouth because why would I want to go after a field where you reach a certain level and you knock another human being down? My husband was given an opportunity to move to Florida to work at University of Florida. And that's what led our family to Florida. So that's 14 years of teaching. I took a year off where I just did some subbing. I really didn't apply for jobs because I just wanted to sub and really was figure myself out. During that year, while we moved down to Florida, my family back home, my mother-in-law had dementia, but her dementia kept getting worse. And my father was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And that year, I took a year sabbatical at my previous, and that following year, that principal that had told me that, he had left. So I was like, maybe I'll give it another chance. Why not? And so and a chance to go back and take care of my mother-in-law and my dad. I had been given the position as a technology teacher. And I taught 600 students Project Lead the Way, which is STEM. So robotics, computer science, coding, digital media commons, all that fun stuff, which I was very thankful, very grateful. My first master's was in education technology. But that first principal telling me that I shouldn't be a teacher, I shared that with the new principal. And so again, the entire year, I was very much treated like I was beneath people, to the point where the principal said, Maria, like, how does it feel to come into work every day knowing that people don't like you? And like, you're really hated. And how does it feel knowing that we purposely ignore your emails and really want you to fail? Well, that's a great question. You know, you didn't hire me to make friends with the teachers. You hired me to be a teacher of Project Lead the Way and teach 600 students. they're my clients, and that's who I show up for.
Good for you.
And so from that, she was able to gain respect for me and said, wow, you have a lot of grit and a lot of determination. We wanted you to fail. And no matter what, you love what you do. And that's teaching. Like, you really know what you're doing. I was like, okay.
What did that come from in both cases? Listening to...
It came from what other people want to say about you.
Is it difference? Is it, oh, you're not really an American? You're not really...
Yeah, you're not really belong here. And I was a threat because I was doing what was asked, and the principal had his own battles that he was dealing with. So I was just an easy target because they know that in Asian culture, you do not fight back at the principal. You do not fight back at your boss. They are your superior, so you bow down to them. So it's just an easy target.
I'm sorry that happened.
I'm not sorry that it happened because I'm so thankful that it happened because it helped me to feel strength within myself to recognize that my identity is not in teaching, that my identity is not held to someone's standards because they don't know what I'm capable of. Mm-hmm. And I'm so thankful that happened because it led me to these conversations with you and to connect with people from around the world and to be able to share real life stories that I'm a human, just like everyone is. And you think about the driving force right now in education and in other businesses. There's a systemic bullying happening. It's now online. It's everywhere. But kids don't enjoy coming to school when they know that their teachers don't care about them. So I'm thankful to have gone through the hard so that I can arrive on the other side and help give others a voice and a chance.
What's essential to living a courageous life?
Being authentically yourself, because every person that is awake, alive, and breathing has a purpose. And there's a reason that they're here on this earth. And so that's essential. It's all the hard that I've had to walk through, and I still walk through every day. I'm currently as a teaching assistant because here moving to Florida, I'm too expensive or overqualified, whatever you want to look at it. I was passed up for that special ed position by a young person that is white. Okay. Even though I did everything that I was supposed to do, showed up every day, engaged with the kids, teaching high flex, created everything, but that doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's what looks good in the public eye. And I am not somebody that would look good in the public eye. So essential is recognizing for myself that my identity doesn't come from teaching. My identity is showing up and helping others know that they're so valuable and they are such a gift to the world and that their voice matters.
How are you not bitter about all that has happened to you and basically knowing what's happening and going, yep, there we go. Here we are again.
Yeah. I think it's that willingness to go a little long haul, which is where my running comes in. My running, and it's one thing that connected me so much to your podcast, with your interview with your brother. It's that you just don't know what you're capable of until you give it a try. And running has been my source of therapy. It's my reflection. It's where I've gotten the writing in, that the inspiration to write. And I wouldn't change anything about my journey of how I arrived at this wilderness, because I also listen to a lot of podcasts, listen to a lot of audiobooks, and I watch kids that struggle. And I just come with the empathy posture because I can so relate to a lot of people and their own journey. But look at how they arrived. You hear Brené Brown, you listen to her book, you read her book, and then you listen to her podcast and the difficult conversations that she's having right now. I had listened to one podcast where she shared that as successful as she is, she said people would send her video of them burning her books just because of the position that she has taken on the current state of our country. People would videotape and put it on Instagram or whatever the different platform of their disgust for her. So I look at all these stories, and I love Simon Sinek as well. Mm-hmm. And his book, Together is Better. And then his book on the infinite game is how I identify myself. It's something that I would say I'm very proud of, is that I have played a game of an infinite mindset, because I don't define my success by the amount of money that's attached to me. I define success as someone that keeps going back to the wilderness, even though they know it's lonely, even though they know it's going to be faced with a lot of criticism. But I know that I can battle hard because I have battled hard all along. And I know that I'm thankful that I'm still alive for a reason.
Amazing. What's your legacy?
The legacy, I think, comes in with the mindset of a possibilitarian. That was something I taught to my students when I was in Westfield, Indiana. And several years later, I still stay in contact with many of my students. And I met up with a student in Chicago right before the pandemic. And she said something that still resonates to this day. Now, she's already graduated from college. She's doing this whole big real life, like adult job. She said, I always remember possibilitarian, because it's always an endless possibility if you have that mindset that anything is possible.
Where did that come from, possibilitarian?
I heard it on the radio.
Okay.
And I was like, as teachers, we take things in and we're like, oh, how can I apply it and give some words of inspiration to my students? And so I knew I was teaching 5th grade. So I said, the word possibilitarian, let's just chunk this together. Let's find the root of it. Like, I was just playing with words. And I've now been able to use that with my students that was determined to tell them that their label doesn't define them, that they are coming into this world with the most incredible heart that's going to set this world on fire. And no labels and what the world tells them doesn't matter, because when you have the mindset of a possibilitarian, you're going to go far and you're going to make an impact for what truly matters in life. And that's caring about other people.
Wow. Every child should have the gift of a teacher like you.
I have been very blessed to have had some incredible students. And just as I teach them, they teach me. And so I feel like the blessing of being a teacher, as I'm learning the lesson, I'm learning from my students. And my students are truly the strength of how I have been able to arrive and not feel like, as I'm braving the wilderness, that I'm really that alone, because we're not really that alone.
What would you do on your last day?
Gosh, I would have the biggest dance party. I would have comedy and party it hard with lots of balloons that says possibilitarian all over it. And yeah, I just have learned to have a best sense of humor at life. And laughter is truly the best medicine in life.
Would you go for a run?
I definitely would. I would like to run and climb mountains all at the same time.
Nice. Anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Absolutely. The blessing of just meeting you. What a gift you are to the world. You have such a powerful story that needs to be told.
Thank you.
2 million times. Thank you so much.
What a gift to have this conversation.
Thank you so much, Linda.
You're welcome.
It's such a pleasure to meet you.
Maria shared that she is working on a book about her experiences called The Lost Identity, which she hopes to have out later this year, 31 years after she came to America. Her hope is that in reading her book, people learn that anything is possible. You have to start by believing in yourself and know that you are capable of so much. I will include in the show notes links to some of the other thought leaders and books she mentions in our conversation. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to this podcast, and if you feel someone else might benefit from listening to this episode, please share it. leave a rating or review wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can visit my website at www.lindamclaughlin.com. I look forward to sharing my next guest story, whose sudden health crisis during the pandemic went from being a source of concern to inspiration for her friends and family. Until next time, my name is Linda McLaughlin in The Arena.